This podcast episode you're going to love if you feel like the sun is out, the truth is out, you're frustrated about not being able to fit into your jeans, and your mood is all over the place, your cravings are all over the place, your weight's all over the place, sleep, it's just not working. But when most people deal with this, they do all kinds of crazy things like fasting, exercising, calorie counting, more cardio. And the things that might have worked for you when you were younger, things that might work for other people, does not work for autism moms. Don't do it, because it's going to make matters worse. The more extreme you go, the more drastic you go to try and get rid of this effect of Christmas and long days indoors in the darkness. The more drastic you go, the worse it's going to get long term, meaning your metabolism is going to slow down even more. You're going to pile on more fats, and it's going to be harder for you to lose weight in the future. Autism moms need a whole different approach when it comes to getting strong and healthy and lean, and it's actually linked to the same things you need to do to turn your child's symptoms around. So I'm really excited to answer all your questions about this in this big Autism Mom Body Q&A. Let's dive in. It's been a while, and I've been really looking forward to having this conversation with you one-on-one, eye to eye. We're going to go through the many amazing questions that you have. I will be talking a little bit about what's been going on in my life. It's been a lot. And then I'm going to answer your questions. Interestingly, all of your questions, I think it's because the sun is out. When the sun's out, the truth is out. When the sun's out, well, it is at least on this hemisphere. When the sun's out, bodies are out. And when I talk about the truth is out, in this context, I mean, this is when we realize what's been going on inside our bodies, inside our houses, that now makes it very, very clear to us why something needs to change. So maybe you can't really fit in your jeans anymore. Maybe you are not really excited about going out, getting into your swimsuit, going to the beach or whatever, the park. This is me having my decaf coffee, and it's really nice. Anyways, the truth is out because the body always tells the truth. Children with autism always tells the truth through symptoms. The body always tells the truth through symptoms and the way that it looks, the way that it metabolizes, the way that it sleeps, energy levels, weight, mood, sleep, digestion. That's the way the body speaks to you. Children speak truth to you via symptoms, and your circumstances also speaks to you. God speaks to you through circumstances, your autistic child's symptoms. Your body speaks to you, and God speaks through your body's symptoms. All of this, just a gift for you to force you to change. And I think your questions this week, which is, how do I feed myself well? I'm so exhausted after cooking for my daughter. That's one of them. Or how about this one? I can't lose weight. I'm struggling with it. I'm always angry. I'm always stressed. Here's another one. Almost the same thing. Losing weight when you're anxious and stressed out. How? And there's a couple of questions about copper toxicity and methylation as well. And then this cortisol overload. I'm tired. I'm having cravings. What do I do? So we're going to talk about these things. We're also going to talk about autism prevention and being overwhelmed and completely numb. But first, I feel like I need to keep you up to speed with what's going on, because you might be hearing some construction noise in the background thinking, what's this woman doing in a modern apartment? You can see it if you're watching this via YouTube. In a modern apartment with all modern facilities, when she was supposed to be living in a tiny home striving to go off grid. And I hear you, and I'm here to tell you what's going on. So in November, December, I moved into the tiny house, started renovating it in June. Didn't get far, just fixed the floors, did some painting. Doesn't really look good yet at all. But I was ready to live there. We had the wood burner going, and I was expecting it to be able to heat up everything throughout the winter. But it got really, really cold at night, so we had to get up several times at night to keep the fire going. That actually also ended up causing the chimney fire, which I'll talk to you about in a while, in a sec. So it was really cold at night. Our sleep wasn't really good, and we did have this backup apartment coming up in December, which was really lucky because we basically just moved in here and then the fire happened. So the deal was that the boys were going to spend more time here, getting to live on their own more, and I would have time on my own, and it was just a perfect arrangement. But then one night at around 11 o'clock, we heard this crackling noise in the chimney, and I just knew, okay, this is a chimney fire. This is serious, because this is a tiny wooden house, and if something goes wrong with fire in a tiny wooden house, it's gone within, I don't know, minutes. So we called the fire department. And they came. Mind you, we just moved from England after living 1 year on our own, after having escaped my toxic relationship, having to start all over because we were in a situation where someone was providing for us, someone was telling us things about the future that wasn't really in alignment with reality. And also when I came to Christ, the relationship completely shifted into something that was not pleasant. Let me just put it that way. So we had been through a lot. I had overcome cancer, and I had to start over with my provision for my family, basically from one day to the next, while battling cancer, like while getting the diagnosis, while getting my breast removed, and moving into a new place, and the boys starting new work. Like we were all just quite battling, and we just then decided we wanted to come back to Denmark, and that was totally God ordained. God wanted us back to Denmark. By the way, it was not God who got us to England. It was a shaman, which means it was a demonic influence, manipulating us to think that we were moving in with my soulmate, that it was a perfect constellation. And what these demonic influences do is that they make something that's dark look really tempting and light for a long time, long enough for you to get hooked, long enough for you to get addicted to it, long enough for you to really lose a lot of sanity, lose out financially, lose out emotionally by leaving. So it's really difficult to leave. So it was not God who brought me to England. It was not synchronicity. It was demonic manipulation. So that became very clear in the last 3 years there. So we had just moved, huge journey via ferry with our little doggy, 17 hours through Europe by ferry and train, and it was very challenging. The dog didn't like it at all. The dog was a mess. We were incredibly stressed out because we were in Amsterdam, we were in Germany, we were on this ferry. But we also felt like this is a huge shift back to where we belong, back to our roots, back to where God wants us, back to our home. And we wanted to be in the northern part of Zealand, where we came from, near Hornbæk, where we came from. And that was almost impossible to think that could happen, because it's a very expensive area. But we managed to get this apartment, and we managed to get the tiny home, which we were then renovating. So then 11 o'clock that night in November, December, I don't even remember. I it was December, the fire happened. And it became clear that the firemen were there for 3 or 4 hours. They were amazing. They said, good thing you called us. Good thing you were awake, because this could have killed you. And I feel like we've been like in these near-death situations for quite a couple of times through spiritual attacks over the past year. But anyway, they told us, you cannot live here, you've got to move out tonight. It's dangerous to be here because of the fire and the smoke. You got to get rid of the beds, you got to turn off the water, everything. Because it was freezing, we had to turn off the water. You literally can't live there without that. You can't go to the bathroom, you can't cook, you couldn't do anything. There's no heat. We weren't allowed to use the wood burner, and it had to be replaced. So, long story short, we've been living here together now in the modern apartment, where we have a room each, nice modern facilities, bathroom, washer, dryer, everything. It's been really comfortable, but now I'm ready to go back to the tiny house with the doggy. I am ready to be there and start growing my own food, which I'm completely behind with now, because you actually need to start in February with the sprouting. So I'll see how much I can get done. The front porch is rotten, so we are renovating that as well. But the main thing is that the wood burner is there. Not just any old wood burner though. This is a wood burning cooking stove. It's got an oven, it's got cooking plates on top of it. You can make any food there, and it heats up 80 square meters, so way more than our house. It can heat up the whole house. So we're really set for summer. We had to get a carpenter to come and do brickwork behind this wood burning stove, because it's not legal to place it up against a wooden wall. So a lot of things, but now it's getting to the time where I'm ready to move back in and start the renovation process as well. A lot needs to get done, and I'll take you with me on that journey, showing you how I'm renovating as a single woman over 50 and going off grid as much and as fast as possible, and growing my own food there. And Bertram is really eager to be there a lot of the time. Melvin is very in love with the place as well. But we also need to build our lives, and they are going to spend more time in this apartment than I am. So that was a little update. One thing, after now having walked with God for 2 years, I feel like I'm very solid in my faith now. I'm doing Bible study every day. I don't get embarrassed about talking about the fact that when I say I follow God, I mean I follow Jesus. And I feel like a lot of the times when people come out of the New Age and into this, when Jesus he's calling a lot of people out of the New Age and out of false religion, there's a lot of deception going on, and there's like a maturing phase where we need to read the Bible and pray and actually be in silence, because you can get deceived, you can get sidetracked into deliverance ministries where they do all these miracle healings, and you can get sidetracked into other types of New Age that looks like it's calling out New Age. But at the moment, I feel that it's almost like an obsession that every time I look at Facebook, I look at Instagram, there are so many people who are still deep within the New Age. So I'm keeping on praying for them. I'm talking more and more about Jesus. And I know that God has a purpose for autism moms, and that purpose includes coming to God, it includes coming to innocence, it includes coming to purity, it includes returning to nature and stepping away from everything that is fake. And what happens when that calling, when you hear that loud and clear, is that you get rejected, you get attacked by the ways of this world, by people who are still attached to this world, by people who are still making a living in the New Age spirituality. I'm talking shamans, people who read Akashic records, crystal healers, spiritual healers, people who do homeopathy, energy work, frequency healing. There's so much out there, and many of these people are actually trying to trick autism moms into this field to see if they can sign a contract in the spiritual realm by getting these moms to engage in these dark activities, which is actually occult activities. And the Bible speaks very clearly about how that is an abomination to God, and that we are not, that God hates it, and that it is a sin. And that's why it's really important for the dark side to try and deceive moms into that whole field. But that's for a podcast for another day. Today, we're going to talk about the body. Oh, did I say enough about this? Yeah, I feel like I need to say a couple of more words about this, because I've been reading the Bible and studying and praying for 2 years now, and I feel that it's very urgent that I include my insights about how there's messages from God and in the Bible for autism moms about dark valleys and how we go through challenging times, about how we need to have good values, about how there really is difference between good and bad, about how we cannot just choose what we want to do, and how we all are very much in love with our sins. We love money. When we are in the ways of the world, there's a love of money, there's a love of self, there's pride, there is greed, there's angry outbursts, there's hatred towards our brothers and neighbors, and all of that, plus the way that we treat nature, the way that we treat animals, the way that we treat children. That is actually what autism symptoms are here to represent. It's all the darkness that we need to step away from. And I feel called to talk much more about my insights when it comes to this. And it's been a while, and I think it takes about 1 to 2 years to mature into knowing the Bible well enough to feel safe in talking about it and receiving all the backlash. I don't talk to almost anybody I knew before I traveled to the UK. I had a huge group of friends and colleagues in the healing and health field, but most of them are deeply into New Age, or they reject anything that has to do with Jesus. I'm not. So there's a big difference between religion and loving God and loving Jesus and reading the Bible. And a lot of evil things have been done in the name of church and in the name of Christianity. So there's a lot of people who are triggered by it. There's a huge antichrist spirit on earth right now. So you also need to be ready to receive all that backlash and not have this need to, water it down and just say God so it fits into every religion and no one's getting offended. No. When it comes to autism and when it comes to God, when it comes to Jesus, there's no way around people getting offended. There's no way around people who are still in the anti-Christ conviction and who are still deeply into the New Age spirituality and need that acknowledgement, need the income, need to be liked, need safety, need to know, okay, this is my direction, this is what I believe in, this is how I manifest, this is how I call in things. And it's really triggering to understand that all of that is dark, it is manipulative, and it will always lead to destruction. Not necessarily on a short term, but long term it will. And you will lose the things that you manifest. You will lose the healing that you accomplish within this demonic realm. Whether it is the healing meditations that Joe Dispenza is talking about, or whether it is Dolores Cannon, or crystals, or homeopathy, or spiritual healers, or shamanism, or ayahuasca, or ceremonies, or cacao ceremonies, whatever it is, it's all the same contract, all the same matrix, and what they want is they want to trick you in. So if people think, well, why isn't she talking about God on Instagram so much and Jesus, and why is she no longer in faith? I'm more in faith and stronger in faith than ever. I've just needed to be with my faith in silence for a while before feeling ready to go out and talk more about this and link it to the healing that I'm also facilitating. So the questions that came in April from you moms out there, I want to read them, and then I want to talk about the aspects of healing autism that is linked to your body and your body's health as well. Now, I want to say this: if you're listening to this and you're feeling triggered because I mentioned God or because I mentioned Jesus, know that there's no coincidence. We are called to listen to things that are triggering right now. Don't go for things that feel aligned, that feels good, that you're drawn to via the heart or feelings, because those are highly deceptive. I know that for many years we've been talking about following your heart, do as you want, follow your feelings, but your feelings quite often can be manipulated. That is how there's an entry point into our actions. This is how we get deceived. This is how we get deceived into twin flame relationships, which is not a thing, or toxic manipulative relationships, or narcissistic partners. We get tempted by those. We get tempted into bad business endeavors. We get tempted into greed or vanity, and we create fake tits, and we fill our face with plastic, or we let other people use our bodies for sex who are not committed to marriage, who are not in a sacred union with us. So our feelings are highly deceptive. Don't necessarily trust your feeling. Don't trust feelings, and don't trust your gut until you really know yourself well, where you know what is trauma response here and what's actual truth. What is of the actual light and not false light pretending to be light, the darkness dressed up as light. So it's in the Bible as well, that Satan always disguises as light. So the darkness always disguises as light. The prince of the darkness disguises as an angel of light. So you cannot trust. I mean, I've seen beautiful white shamans that have led me straight to disaster. I've seen the most incredible ayahuasca ceremonies that have led me to disease. Did you know that there are shamans that work with cleansing the energy field? Not that I would actually recommend that, but they cleanse the energy field from people who've been in ayahuasca ceremonies, because what they say is people don't know what they're doing. When they come out, no one comes out without dark spirits attached to them, and their energy field is black and diseased like terminal cancer patients. Probably not a coincidence that I had cancer afterwards, after having participated in ayahuasca ceremonies, and after having had my implants, which is another deception that is created by sin. These toxic implants that will damage everybody. So when we talk about body and health on the podcast today, we got to be really careful that we don't get tempted into this self-worship, self-obsession, self-love cult that will take us away from innocence and purity and humbleness and grace and humility. But at the same time, God, I believe, when it comes to autism, is speaking to us through symptoms. Our children's symptoms, which are tantrums and screaming, eloping, sleepless nights, digestive issues, anger, anxiety, rigidity, nonverbal autism. And our symptoms, which is actually pretty much mentioned in the questions today, which is often depression, anxiety, rigidity, extremism, extreme dieting, or weight issues. And many, many women with children who has autism end up having cancer at some point, because we are all dealing with undermethylation. Probably 90% of us are dealing with that. At least our children, 95% of our children, and often we have the same issues with undermethylation, which increases the risk of degenerative diseases, chronic disease. It impairs the balance of enzyme production, hormones, and neurotransmitters, which is why the mood is all over the place in autism families. But it also affects the DNA expression, which means that affects everything in the body, including our immune response and including our genes and the way that they turn on the bad genes and turn off the bad genes and turn off healing mechanisms in the body, or turn them off. So we want to turn on the good genes and turn off the bad genes, and when we're under methylators, that can be a real issue. So that's why so many moms are fat, sad, anxious, depressed, or underweight, obsessed, vegan, over-exercising, and overspending on the energy side of things. So there's a tendency to be extreme in one direction or the other. So when I get a question like this, how do I feed myself when I'm exhausted after cooking for my daughter? Here are some of the things that I would usually do when I would work with a mom who's got this issue, which is what almost every mom that comes into my community, the Autism Turnaround membership, which you can read about on the website, barefootautismwarriors.com. You just go to, I think at the moment it still says the course, but it is a membership. So click on membership or click on course to read more about it. But what I see when we are confused about how to feed ourselves, whether we don't have the energy for it or we feel like we don't have the knowledge to know, how do I choose a food that's right for my biotype? The number one mistake that I see is that we have a tendency as warrior moms to focus very myopically on our children, recovering our children, taking care of our children, feeding our children. Now that's good from a value-based standpoint, that we need to be self-sacrificing, we need to be humble, we need to be willing to go through hard things, especially if we want to turn autism around, because that requires changing everything from diet to lifestyle to the way that we think and behave in this world. So the mistake there is not that you're a good person, but that you are not understanding what it takes to go through a jungle that is dangerous and full of enemies and full of dangers. If you go through a jungle and you have your child with you and you know that you're going to walk through this jungle for months, if you want to turn autism symptoms around, you've got to aim for around 12 months of continuous step-by-step process, a step-by-step process by which you turn every stone to understand the bio-individual needs for your child, to understand the messages behind each symptom. And that normally takes me around 12 months to get moms to an understanding of that. Which is also why I say, this is just a side note again, don't trust your gut, don't trust your feelings, don't trust your body until you are purified, until you are healed, until you know the language of the turnaround process. What's the language of the turnaround process? Well, that's a language where you can look at your body, and whenever there's a symptom, whenever you have cellulite or you gain weight or you can't sleep at night, you know exactly what you have been eating. You know exactly how to regulate that with food, nutrition, and lifestyle changes. You don't have to go and ask somebody. You don't have to go to a fitness coach. You don't have to do fasting. You don't have to go to extremes or ask anybody outside of yourself, because you know the language of your body. And when you know the language of your body, you know how to respond to it, you know how to feed it, you know how to adjust. And by doing that, the symptoms disappear. When you don't know the language, this is when you have yo-yo dieting, yo-yo mood, yo-yo weight, yo-yo sleep. You're all over the place. Every season you need to lose weight because you've been binge eating over Christmas and then over Easter and New Year's. And you have unstable mood, you have unstable energy levels. You don't know your body really well. You don't understand why it gets symptoms and why you don't sleep well at night. You don't understand when you certainly have digestive issues, what to do about it. So you become this helpless, hopeless person that always have to ask other people for help or advice. And so you go from fasting to keto to vegan diets, juicing, you do the cardio workouts, or you do the carnivore diet, or you then go from one extreme where you're extremely healthy to the other extreme where you just can't hold it anymore, and then you just binge eat because you've been so extreme and so boring. You've been avoiding carbs, and then you just have to have them, and it then becomes a bad one. So that's a yo-yo lifestyle when you don't know the language. And it's like being in a different country. When you come to a different country, you actually don't know the language. So you don't get to have deep conversations with people. You don't know how to understand the depth of life in a new country because you can't relate on a deep level. Your language is at beginner stage. It's like two children talking to each other. That's how most moms come into my community when it comes to the relationship they have with their bodies, and therefore also the relationship they have with their children and their children's symptoms. How bizarre is that for us to realize? That just like you don't understand the language, you can't have deep conversations, you don't understand the concepts, you don't understand the culture. When you come to a new country, you need to learn grammar. You need to learn to put sentences together. And you learn that by practicing. And it's the same thing when it comes to the turnaround process. Turning autism around is always, always, always a process of you turning your body around as well. If you heal, your child's symptoms will change. That's why moms often come into the turnaround tribe with a very unhealthy body and they leave with a very healthy body. If you want to see an example of that, go and check out Ashley's podcast and the pictures that she posted there. You can find it on the website barefootautismwarriors.com /podcasts, and just scroll down until you find Ashley. But that's why I say don't trust your body, because your body will have cravings based on self-sabotage patterns, based on trauma response, based on a nervous system that's out of balance, based on unstable blood sugar, based on probably parasites and candida that want sugar, based on the amount of fat that you carry around, because that fat tissue will call for more calories and will call for more sugar and will call for more junk, especially if you don't know what to eat in the morning. So what I will say to you who ask this question, how do I feed myself well when I'm exhausted after cooking for my daughter, is that if you go through the jungle, you have to go through a jungle, and your jungle is the autism turnaround process. And you go into that jungle and you're not well fed, and you don't really know yourself, you don't know your limits, you don't know your capacity, you don't know your body, you're putting both of you in danger. Because if you're not well nourished, if you're not strong, if you don't have muscles, if you don't have self-awareness, you won't know where the dangers are, and you won't have the strength to pull you both through that process. The jungle of turning autism around, which I described previously, is around 6 to 12 months of a process inside my community anyways. So you need to feed yourself, and you need to know yourself, before you can take your child through the jungle. We all know that narrative of putting your mask on first when you're in a plane crash, because if the oxygen drops and you don't have a mask on, you cannot help your child. So another thing I want to ask you is, how well do you know your body? Because your body will tell you what you need, what types of carbs you need, what types of protein you need, what types of fruits you need on any given day. And just like your body changes all the time, so that what you need today is not what you need tomorrow or in another season, because it depends on hormones, it depends on the weather, it depends on your genetics, it depends on where you're from, your ancestors are from, it depends on your metabolism, it depends on your biotype. Those needs change all the time for you, and they change all the time for your child as well. So the only way to know what to feed yourself well is to get to know your body really well. And when we know our body really well, we can trust our body's feedback. We can actually trust our body when we have gotten to know the body really well, which means we heal our trauma. We learn the language of our body. What does my body do when it's well nourished? What does my body do when it's malnourished? Is it cravings? Do I gain weight, lose weight, cellulite, don't sleep well at night, get constipated, anxious? Lots of the things that we think is mental health issues is actually nutritional issues, including anxiety has a huge link to nutrition. Depression has a huge link to nutrition, particularly in autism families where under-methylation is linked to depression, which about 90 to 95% of all children with autism have, and the parents are affected by this often. Copper is linked to high anxiety and panic attacks. Methylation issues are also linked to eating disorders and rigidity and compulsive dieting, including medical medium and vegan diets that actually, it doesn't make you feel good long term, but you just cannot let go of it because you're so perfectionist. It's also linked to perfectionism. It's linked to overperforming. It's linked to being severely competitive. So, nutrition, body, behavior, autism, anxiety, food, feeding, or not feeding yourself well, it's all linked. And when you fix this in one area, you fix it in all areas. So you got to know what your biotype is. You got to know what your bio-individual needs are. And people always ask me, how do I test what my biotype is? Well, I've got to say to you, this takes me around 3 months to teach people inside my membership. So I can't cover that in a podcast, unfortunately. So the next question is, how do I lose weight when I'm anxious and stressed out? And actually, Katharina is asking a similar question. She says, I'm struggling with my weight. I can't lose weight. And I'm always moody, I'm always angry, I'm always stressed. So these are two questions that I want to mix in with the answer for question number 4, which is, I have cortisol all over the place, I'm always tired, and I'm always craving carbs, and I don't know what to do. So let's talk about what these issues are and how you can get a strong, balanced body and stability in your mood, because anxiety and stress, I know it's something that a lot of moms with children on the spectrum are dealing with, but no matter what type of mom you are, stress and anxiety does not make the autism turnaround process easier. But on the other hand, what causes autism symptoms are also the same things that cause anxiety and depression and stress and battles with weight. So if you want a strong body where you have stability, you don't just gain and lose, binge eat and then have to fast. And like, these extremes are no good. And extremes will always lead to other extremes. So if you're extremely healthy and you don't eat any carbs, or you're on these extreme exclusion diets for a while, you will binge back and need carbs. Your body will crave it in a way that you cannot resist, and it won't be the healthy carbs then that you're going to go for. And if you do fast and you lose weight by fasting or starvation or calorie counting, you will gain those kilos back. You will gain that weight back on, because it's an unnatural process for the body. It's a very stressful process for the body. It's a very suboptimal way to deal with the responses that the body is actually trying to tell you something through fat tissue, through weight gain, and through anxiety and through depression. We don't want to just try and take a pill and get rid of it, or go and do a diet and try and get rid of it, because we want to understand what the message is behind this. So what we don't want to do when we are dealing with stress and cravings and we're tired and anxious and we just cannot lose weight is that we do not want to eat less and exercise more, particularly not cardio. Because if the body is already under pressure, the body is already stressed, the body is already anxious, it's afraid, it fears for its life, it's already slowing down metabolism, it is already holding on to whatever it's got. And if you push it further, that shit's only going to get worse. Meaning, your body's going to be more fat loss resistant, more hungry, and more imbalanced. And the next time, you can starve yourself thin. You can just fast for over 12 hours, even though it's really unhealthy. There's no health benefit for women in fasting over 12 hours. You can do it, but the body will always gain it back. And more this time, because then it knows what you're up to, and it knows that it can risk this type of obnoxious behavior and starvation. So it will pile on more to compensate for that, so that it will be ready for next time. So don't starve yourself. Don't ever fast over 12 hours. No health benefits for women, no matter what you see on YouTube. And the most experienced experts when it comes to fasting, who's done all the research and put all the data together, will tell you that anything over 12 hours is not a health benefit for women. It's something that's been used for chronic disease and degenerative diseases, but not for well-being, not for longevity, and not for women, not for hormones. Don't skip breakfast. Don't ever skip breakfast, because breakfast is what sets the receptors for the day, and breakfast is what keeps you stable throughout the day. So if you skip breakfast, you will be so hungry later on in the day that you will overeat, and you will then not be able to control it, because you didn't eat when your body told you with certain cues when it was ready to eat. And when you leave it for too long, when the body has given you certain messages, the body will take over. The body will take control, and you will have no control over the amount of food that you eat. And so the fact that you skip breakfast is a waste of time, because the body will just make sure that you get the food that you need later in the day, where you will eat too big of a meal and too much and too late. Don't skip carbs. All women need carbs to build juicy muscle, to have a good metabolism, for the thyroid hormone, for mood, for everything we need carbs. And I'm not talking about broccoli, I'm not talking about vegetables, I'm talking about fruit, I'm talking about healthy cake, I'm talking about chocolate, I'm talking about berries, talking about smoothies. I'm not talking about salad, okay? So don't skip the carbs, because that will lead to overeating, imbalance, and probably weight gain long term, and definitely issues with your thyroid hormones later on, especially if you have these issues that we just described. So that's one thing. You're not eating enough, you're skipping meals, and you're probably sometimes over-exercising or doing the wrong type of exercising. So what you want to do is you want to go for long walks, and you want to build muscle. So you want to do short sessions with a lot of weight, where you do it safely, because your body is already feeling unsafe. So don't be going on lifting too heavy, or going on for too long, or doing Ironmans or marathons, or longer runs, or cardio, or all this extreme physical pushing your body to the max. When your body is not safe, your body's just going to feel more and more unsafe. You need your brain and body to be connected. Your brain needs to feel safe to build muscle. Your brain needs to feel safe to lose weight. And your nervous system needs to be balanced in order for you to deal with cravings and tiredness and anxiousness and accumulated weight that is an emergency response in a stressed body. You cannot push a stressed body into fat loss by stressing it more. So you need to connect the brain and body. You need to know how to deal with your self-sabotage patterns, because let me tell you this. It's not a question of whether you self-sabotage by creating fat gain and cravings and ill health in your body. It's a question of when you do it, because we all do it. There are two types of people, those who self-sabotage and those who are in denial about their self-sabotage. And the more intelligent you are, the more sophisticated these self-sabotage patterns will be. So you will start a fasting regime, or you will cut carbs, or you will secretly get into a situation where you are bound to overeat at some point because you're restricting, or you're over-exercising or exercising without having enough food on board. Exercising without having enough food on board will lead to stress and weight gain and imbalanced and hormonal disasters, and you will age quicker if you do that. So you need to deal with your self-sabotage patterns because they are based on survival skills. They are biological and you cannot work against them. Your brain will not allow you to get healthy and lose weight. Your brain will not allow you to recover your child. Your brain and your self-sabotage patterns will work against any change, even though the change will lead to weight loss and autism turnarounds and a healthy body, because any change is a threat to a brain that is afraid. I'll repeat that. Any change, whether you get healthy or recover your child from symptoms, is a threat to your brain and your self-sabotage patterns. If you are in a stressed fight and flight state in your nervous system and in your body. So if you don't understand self-sabotage patterns, it's something that I teach extensively, and stress type healing as well, in every single phase inside my membership. And it's the biggest cue and clue to my own personal healing journey was when I learned how a part of me always wants change and another part of me does not want change. And until you get to know that part of you that doesn't want change, that part of you is going to run the ship. And you can just ask yourself this question to see if this is true for you or not. Have you ever decided on quitting sugar, or starting an exercise routine, or going to bed early, or stop scrolling on Facebook and Instagram, and then done the exact opposite? You got it. That's your subconscious self-sabotage pattern, and that will continue to the day that you die until you heal that underlying fear, that underlying trauma that this self-sabotage pattern is compensating for. I've seen moms change their children's symptoms. I've seen moms get a completely youthful and strong body. I've seen moms go from a horrible relationship to saving their relationship and falling in love with their husbands again, strictly by working on their self-sabotage patterns and their stress type. Just to remind you that cortisol stress types are overperformers, they are extremists, they overdo things, they are not really connected to their body, they feel like a head on the stick. You don't really know why your body is doing what it's doing. There's a tendency to be a control freak, an overperformer, very competitive, very skeptical, critical, and sometimes aggressive and snappy when you're a cortisol type. And that's because you can't really feel your body. You're numb because you have like an underlying fear that you have to do something, you have to perform in order to earn the right to be here. Somewhere in life you learned that you're not good enough just by being you, that you're not safe, and this is your survival strategy. Only problem is it causes all kinds of health issues for you. And it also impairs autism turnarounds for your child, because you're so numb, you don't know your body. And when you don't know your body and you're numb and you're a control freak and you're detached from yourself, you won't be able to turn into and tune into those subtle changes that's needed in your child's diet and your food and your life in order to help your child. Again, we can only heal our children to the level that we have healed ourselves and our stress type. The thyroid type, on the other hand, is the procrastinator, is the one that accumulates fat on the body. Both types, when they exercise, they get more exhausted often. They accumulate fat different places. The cortisol type on the belly, sometimes on the legs and the back. The thyroid types all over the place. They just cannot lose weight. They don't have energy. None of the types really have any energy. The thyroid type, it's this procrastination. Nothing gets done. They feel like their life is harder than everybody else's. They're always late for things. They always accumulate projects, multitask. Things doesn't get done. And they do often tend to feel like they have it harder than everybody else. These are the types that store a lot of stuff around the house or the attic, basement. They always feel like they're left out, or not always feel like they're left out, but they tend to feel like they don't connect with people, or they're not loved or included. And they often feel into all other people's feelings. So they're very empathic, very highly sensitive people. So they can feel you, they can feel other people, that you can go into a room and you can sense the whole thing, what's going on there. Because you're using that to escape from your own body, from your own pain, from your own grief. And this type has issues with hair loss, premature aging, cortisol type as well. Has issues with thyroid, weight gain, cold hands and feet, hormonal issues. They feel like they're aging too quickly, and they're very emotional. Their mood swings back and forth, and have a tendency towards sadness and heaviness in feelings. And this type comes from an underlying fear of not being good enough, because they have felt rejected at some point in life. At some point in life, they didn't feel safe. And so if this is your issue, or if you have thyroid issue or weight issues or issues with any of this, and multitasking and being messy and being late and feeling like a victim, chances are that you have that original trauma where someone turned their back on you, someone who should have protected you, someone who should have picked you up, someone who should have fed you and included you. So there's an underlying feeling of being unsafe for the thyroid type. And what happens is that the thyroid type then turns their back on against themselves, so they keep on abandoning themselves as well. This is why things get chaotic. This is why they multitask. This is why they're messy, and they always self-sabotage massively. So until we fix that original trauma and heal that original trauma, things never happen for the thyroid type. These are the types that will have the same symptoms in their child for ages, and the same symptoms in their lives and in their bodies for ages, and they don't understand why. And in reality, it's a hormonal self-sabotage pattern that is very different to the cortisol pattern when it comes to how to solve it. And it's something that I'm an expert in, and I've been an expert in for 15 years. Another thing you need to know about when it comes to being tired, having cravings and anxiousness and struggling with weight and cortisol is that you're probably nature deficient, and you probably have issues with dopamine. Your dopamine baseline is not where it should be, which leads to addiction. It leads to making the wrong decisions based on cravings. So you'll go for the foods that aren't good for you. You'll go for the types of entertainment and stimulants that are not good for you. And then you feel extremely bad afterwards, because you have this peak in dopamine when you get what you want, whether it's sugar or Facebook or whatever it is. And then you have a big drop that is so low that you never get back to baseline. And in order to get back to baseline, what I normally do is that I take moms through a process of mindset work, healing nature deficiency and using the brilliance of circadian rhythm and lifestyle changes that are super easy to implement in order to create that dopamine baseline for you, so that you get out of addiction without having to force yourself or push yourself or ask somebody else for help. The body's going to naturally just go for what's good for you and not really be interested in all these things that are bad for you, and you will naturally and easily lose weight as well. So dopamine addiction, hormonal issues, nature deficiency and light deficiency, not knowing your body type and your metabolic type are some of the reasons why you always have cravings, why you're always tired, why you're stressed, why you're depressed. So remember that depression, stress, and anxiety is linked to the underlying messages that also lead to autism. And these are the things that I'm so passionate about helping moms accomplish an understanding of and actually get to fix. So if you want to hear more about that, go to my website and click under contact, or book a call, or check out some of the case studies there to see what's going on and how I work with moms, or go to the course or the membership to get started for yourself. But you can always get a conversation with one of the experienced moms that are working with me currently about what's holding you back, where do you want to be, what's slowing you down, what's standing in your way when it comes to where you are at now and where you want to be a year from now. So always send us an email, Barefoot Autism Warriors, contact@barefootautismwarriors.com if you want a conversation. We're real people. We are there for you. It's not just a bot or like an admin. We are real moms who've done this work for ourselves and our children, that have conversations with you about how we might be able to help you if you want to make that investment. So knowing your body type, we all have different bio-individual needs, and they change all the time. So your need for protein changes, your need for carbs changes, your need for fats. It's different fats for different people, but also different fats for different scenarios and months and personality types. So you can't just eat the same thing all the time, because the body needs you to change, and that's what we're actually designed to do. And sometimes we get away from that wisdom because we live such an artificial indoor lifestyle. But I'm telling you, you can have a super strong, healthy body and a child without symptoms, and the road to both is pretty similar. And that's why I work mainly on correcting your body, so that you can become the expert that can then implement what you've learned about adjusting your own symptoms and your own body onto how to adjust and help your child. I want to say a couple of things about methylation, copper, zinc, and autism prevention, because it's a question that I've had come up a while, for some time now, a lot. I had a question, how long did it take for you, Ninka, to balance out methylation, copper, and zinc ratios with functional medicine? And my answer was a little bit provocative, but I said, I don't like functional medicine. I broke up with functional medicine many years ago, because functional medicine, if you notice all the functional medicine practitioners, what they do is they test, well, you lack this nutrient, or they do gene testing. I mean, you cannot use the gene testing and the MTHFR testing for anything, least of all for prescribing supplements, which is what they actually do. They do testing. They say, oh, you lack this, let me give you this supplement. Or here's a gene test, and then I'm going to give you a diet based on your gene SNPs or your mutations. Wrong. You cannot do that. It's not about your genetic mutations. It's about epigenetics. It's about adjusting the environment so that the genes don't express. And this is why we need to fix methylation. Okay, we need to fix methylation because when we are undermethylated, the genes don't express the way that we want them. And so you can have MTHFR issues all over the place. But if you epigenetically know how to adjust so that these genes don't express, these mutations don't cause problems, I'd rather say, then why even bother with this expensive gene test that doesn't say anything about what's actually going on with methylation? It doesn't. So I don't use functional medicine. I use nutrigenomic medicine. I don't personally, but the doctor that's teaching inside my membership does, and teaches you how to do that too. Bio-individual nutrition. Functional medicine is a bit outdated, and there's not a lot of functional medicine practitioners that actually make a difference in children with autism's lives or in the mom's lives. Honestly, we just have to be honest about that. It's a bit outdated. So with that, it has to do with taking the tests in the right environment. And for example, in Scandinavia, there's no way that the tests can get to the best labs in the right way and in time. That's why most practitioners don't take clients from Scandinavia anymore. That's why you have to learn to do this by yourself. You have to learn to adjust these things by yourself. And we're also talking about getting a phlebotomist flown in from England and getting it done, or fly a group of people to England to get this done. But to deal with elevated cryptopyrroles, to take those tests, the copper to zinc ratio tests, and to understand methylation, undermethylation versus overmethylation, that's one thing. That's difficult enough. And most people in most labs get it wrong. But then you also have to know what to do with that information, because you can have 3 people with the same test results like you do in my family. But then when you take that history and you understand what's going on in their lives and what kind of a life they've lived and other things that's going on in the body, we are coming up with 3 different people with the same test results that need 3 different approaches when it comes to nutritional supplements and lifestyle changes. So for our family, it probably took around 6 months to fully understand and find that sweet spot. Because as an example, with zinc, if you have too much copper and you start taking zinc, it takes a long time for zinc to replenish and to get that adequate level and balance out with copper. It's got to be balanced. You can't have too much zinc or too much copper. It's got to be balanced, so it's a tug-of war. And you got to know what to do when you do that. You got to have the right practitioner to teach you how to do that and monitor that for your child, which is what we do in the membership, in the turnaround membership at barefootautismwarriors.com. But then if you get that wrong and you have too much zinc coming into the system, you dump copper too quickly. This is highly dangerous. Don't try this at home, because you can actually get into a psychosis. These are incidents where you dump copper into the bloodstream and then it causes more problems than it did previously. Because you store it and then it's released and then it causes problems. This is where people can get psychotic, or they can get extremely anxious, or they can get into postnatal reactions that are very severely problematic, or severe mental health issues. So we've got to be careful with this. This is not something you just do at home on your own without knowing what you're doing. And then there's the issue with methylation. When you're balancing out someone who's undermethylated with nutritional support, and you add in zinc, you add in B6, you add in other things to balance out methylation. Methylation's got to be balanced, and it's different from person to person how that's done. You don't want to go overboard. You don't want to get that person into overmethylation. So again, it's a tug of war, and that balance act is what, in my experience, is something that only a few practitioners in the epigenetic nutrigenomic field know really well how to do. And there are very few people that I trust, and one of them is teaching inside the membership. I would never ever go out and teach people about methylation or help them balance out methylation. But I know that dietitians do that, and I don't understand how they dare do that, because they can get people into mental health disasters. They can worsen the autism symptoms. You probably need 6 years of clinical experience in order to be able to do this. This is not for everybody at all. So it took 6 months to understand it, and probably a year to fully balance it out. But we felt better almost immediately. So that was that about the testing. Do shoot us an email at contact@barefootautismwarriors.com if you have more questions about this. And then I just want to say, autism prevention is the same as the autism turnaround process. If you are someone with autism in the family, I would give your body 2 years of clean living and autism turnaround processes, eating right, fixing your mindset, fixing your nervous system, nature deficiency, going through the emotional and physical healing in phase 3, and going through the education in phase 5, which is about methylation. It's about balancing out metals and minerals. It's about gut repair. It's about testing and which ones. It's about healing with food. It's about inflammation and brain inflammation. Those things need to be in place for you as a mom, as a vessel. You're the one that's carrying the child, so your body's got to be super healthy and clean for 2 years, and your nutrients got to be on top and really just balanced everywhere for you to be ready to create a child. Unless and that's why we often see a mom have more than one child with autism, is because these things aren't discovered and aren't adjusted in time. Last thing I want to say is that being overwhelmed and being numb and feeling like I can't do anymore, I just can't, and I particularly cannot focus on myself when my child is suffering. I want to say to you that your child will be suffering until you focus on yourself. Your child will be suffering with symptoms until you heal your nervous system, until you understand what the message is from autism for you about what needs to change in your life, in your food, in your lifestyle, in your way of thinking, what God's plan is for you when it comes to sending an autistic child to you. It's always within the topic of something's got to change, and it's something major, and it's never what we want to let go of that we have to let go of. We always want to keep doing what we've always done. We want to live where we've always lived. We want to eat what we've always eaten. We don't want to sacrifice our comfort, but I'm telling you, if you want to turn autism around, you're going to make some huge sacrifices. This is not selling my system really well, but that's the truth. People who do not see results are often the people who want to hold on to who they are instead of who they could become as a mom of a child who get his or her independence, learn how to live in society without stimming, learn to speak and respond to their name, learn to sleep through the night, learn to live a life where they can be independent and have a job and have a wife and have friends and drive a car. Those things that seem like impossible when you're in the dark phase of autism, but which I have witnessed so many times is absolutely possible if you're willing to let go of equally big things that you are attached to. So, yeah. Autism is a big thing, it's a big deal, and that's why you're chosen. The more you suffer, the more dark valleys you go through, the more your faith is shaped, the more character you're building, and the more you're changing. The more miracles you're going to be demonstrating through the changes in your life. And we have to let go of New Age spirituality. We have to let go of Reiki. We have to let go of religious cults that are based on worshipping priests or saints or gods and goddesses by the millions or thousands. We have to let go of vanity. We have to let go of greed. We have to let go of pride. We have to let go of artificialness. We have to let go of the obsession with money and sex that is in this society. We have to return to good values and nature and family in order to deal with this epidemic. It's 1 in 36 children now, and every single one of the families out there will be affected, and your children will have autistic children. You will have more autistic children if you don't face the message behind autism that you've been called to uncover and unscramble, because you can change this epidemic by changing your ways, changing your lifestyle, changing your body, and ultimately changing your child to get that child to independence. By turning turn every stone to understand the messages behind autism. So we came a long way to understand body and weight loss and anxiety and stress and cortisol and autism symptoms. And as usual, I want to say that I'm not a doctor, I'm not a healthcare practitioner, I'm not here to diagnose or treat, and anything that you listen to here is strictly and purely educational, and it's at your own risk and responsibility if you want to follow any of the educational tips in this podcast or anywhere on my website. But for those of you who are listening, I'm super, super grateful. And it means a lot for me that so many of you are tuning in. Last time I checked, 200,000 downloads, and I'm so, so, so grateful. So I would ask you, if this podcast was valuable to you, that you go to iTunes or wherever you listen to the podcast and give it a review, give it some stars. I would love 5 if you feel like it, and share this podcast with someone that you think could benefit from it, because by sharing, we can change this. And when you share, you also bring this message to other people, and you keep me able to keep this going and spread this word to as many people as possible. And you also help the podcast get out there to people. Without you, I cannot do it. Always welcome to send me an email at contact@barefootautismwarriors.com. Real people always answering you, and we are moms that want to help you and want to be there for you as well. So until next time, take care.